Well, getting back to the tomb of the Shroud, it is about 2,000 years old. There were about 20 Jews buried there. Note some information about the DNA result. We read this off, mitochondrial DNA analysis. Confirmed the locks of hair were contextually associated with the skeletal remains found in locus SC1. Haplotype designations for mtDNA analyses are population categorizations that have been used extensively in the past to imply population movements. Infer means you infer, but I would say I put the word imply there. Even though it's incorrectly worded, I'll fix it. The haplotypes for the tomb of the Shroud individuals are commonly distributed throughout the north of Africa and the Middle East to Eastern Europe. Tomb occupants exhibit a number of different maternal influences. The maternal relatedness of these individuals supports the inference that this Acad site was a family tomb which was in use in the 1st century CE. So that is it. Hence, 2,000 years ago, these Jews of the family that were buried there were not black Africans. DNA 2,000 years ago is consistent with research on the Jews. A series of analyses was performed to address whether modern Jewish Y-chromosome diversity derives mainly from a common Middle Eastern source population or from an admixture with neighboring non-Jewish populations during and after the Diaspora. Despite their long-term residence in different countries and isolation from one another, most Jewish populations were not significantly different from one another at the genetic level. The admixture estimates suggest low levels of European Y-chromosome gene flow into Ashkenazi and Roman Jewish communities. A multidimensional scaling plot placed 6 of the 7 Jewish populations in a relatively tight cluster that was interspersed with Middle Eastern non-Jewish populations, including Palestinians and Syrians. Pairwise differentiation tests further indicated that these Jewish and Middle Eastern non-Jewish populations were not statistically different. The results support the hypothesis that the paternal gene pools of Jewish communities from Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East descended from a common Middle Eastern ancestral population and suggest that most Jewish communities have remained relatively isolated from neighboring non-Jewish communities during and after the Diaspora. Jews were not originally black and displaced by white people like some have erroneously claimed from this analysis. Notice that also something from the Song of Solomon. My beloved is white and ruddy. My beloved is white and ruddy. The beloved is said to have been white. Now the Hebrew word tash, translated as white, does not necessarily mean the color white, though it can. It means bright or dazzling. Now the famous Hebrew rabbi known as Rashi wrote the following about the above. Now the famous Hebrew rabbi known as Rashi wrote the following about the above, which we just read. My beloved is pure white, white as in they were whiter than milk. Look at that website here to verify that. But now notice something else from the Song of Solomon. I am dark but lovely, O daughters of Jerusalem, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains of Solomon. Do not look upon me because I am dark, because the sun has tanned me. Notice that the woman is black from the sun. She would not have said that if she was black from birth. White people can tan to be quite dark from the sun. Yet at least one proponent of black Israelism has improperly pointed to Song of Solomon as proof. You can't tan. Black people don't tan that much. And you make notice of it, they're probably white. Notice the following related to Moses. Then Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman who he had married. For he had married an Ethiopian woman. And Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Cushite woman whom he had married, for he had married a Cushite woman. So we get two different sources to declare the same thing. The word translated as Ethiopian is word kushi, which according to BibleSoft's New Exhaustive Strong's Numbers in Concordance with Expanded Greek means descendant of Cush, or in other words, people of dark color, and is commonly translated as Cush or Cushite in many Old Testament passages. Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because he had married a black woman, as Cushites are black, dark-skinned Africans. If Moses was black, then it would not seem that they would have proceeded with their charge against him. also something that Jeremiah wrote. Can the Ethiopian change his skin or the leopard its spots? Can an Ethiopian change the color of his skin? Okay, two different sources of translation, NLT and New King James Version. Again, this is the Hebrew word Cuishi, and it would make no sense that Jeremiah would refer to a different people if his own people were black. Furthermore, it should be noted that Jeremiah took the king's daughters to the British Isles, and the current queen is a descendant, and Queen Elizabeth II is white. Notice also the following. By faith, Moses, when he became of age, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he looked to the reward. 2 points related to the above. A black Hebrew advocate stated that many of the pharaohs seemed to have been white, but most of the Egyptians were black. While most Egyptians were not black, if Moses refused to be considered to be called the son of a pharaoh's daughter, it is illogical that he was basically white. Otherwise, it is not possible for him to pass as Pharaoh's daughter. Of course, not all of the Israelites were white, as the Bible teaches. A mixed multitude went up with them also, Exodus 12:38. Furthermore, I had a university professor who looked Chinese, but said he was Jewish. So yes, there was some interbreeding. And yes, there are black people who are also interbred with Jews and other Israelites. Now we have 1st century Roman coins. Some have tried to claim that the Jews were black, hence Jesus was black. Because of that claim, I have also located some photos of 1st century AD coins. The century Jesus was executed in. After General Titus conquered Jerusalem in 70 AD, Emperor Vespasian issued coins, the backside of which shows conquered Jews. Titus on the left, Jewish man on the right, the bottom right. And here is Vespasian on the left, captured Jewish soldiers on the right. Notice that the Jews were not African. The two captured men have traditionally Caucasoid, not Negroid hair. The inscription on the second coin is in Latin as Idua Capta, which is translated into English as Judea taken. These coins are clear evidence that the Jews of the 1st century, like Jesus, were not black Africans. The Jews were Caucasians. If most Jews of Jesus' time were black, the coins would have been expected to portray that, but they do not. These are absolute historical proof, no matter what color people may think the ancient Egyptians were or what their DNA was. The issue is whether the ancient Jews of Jesus' time, put in the word time here, were predominantly black. The Roman coins prove that they were not. Now the question is, Scythians? Okay, let's see what that means. Various ones have claimed that the lost tribes of Israel went from Israel to the land of the Medes, then through Scythia, and then into Europe. Several centuries after the departure of the 10 tribes under Jeroboam, 1 Kings 11:1, the kingdom of Israel was overtaken by the Assyrian Empire. The Assyrians removed most of the people of the 10 tribes northeast and replaced them with peoples from various lands. This is recorded in the Bible, 2 Kings 17:5-6, and occurred in the 8th century BCE. The people were placed in cities in the land of the Medes. That land ended up being fairly close to the land of the nomadic Scythians later occupied. Some of the peoples moved north in various ways, as far as more of them later moving the lake. The late Dr. Hebrew wrote, Greek writers in the time of Christ recognized that the regions of northern Asia Minor were non-Greeks, except for a few Greeks trading colonies in the port cities. New peoples, the Greeks tell us, were living in northern Asia Minor in New Testament times. Here is the surprising account of Diaspora of Sicily. Many conquered peoples were removed to other homes, and 2 of these became very great colonies. The one composed of Assyrians and was removed to the land between Paphlagonia and Pontus, and the other was drawn from Media and planted along the Tanis, the river Don, in ancient Scythia, the modern Ukraine north of the Black Sea in southern Russia. Notice the areas from which these colonies came: Assyria and Media, the very areas to which the house of Israel was taken captive. Parthia was defeated by Persia in AD 226, now believed to have been 224, expelled from Parthia the 10 tribes, and the Medes moved north of the Black Sea into Scythia. From there, AD 256, the 10 tribes migrated with their brethren from Asia Minor into northwest Europe. Around the 2nd century CE, the Scythians tended to drop out of known history. There were different groups called Scythians, and it looks like to be that some of them then ended up in Europe and the British Isles. Notice also the Scythian tribes continued to flock into Europe. The Saxons were a Scythian tribe, and of the various Scythian nations which have been recorded, the Sakai and Sakai are the people from whom the descent of the Saxons can be implied. He doesn't know the word meaning implied and inferred, so I'll put implied in here. Sakal Suna, or the sons of Sakal, were abbreviated into Saxon, is the same sound as Saxon, seems a reasonable etymology of the word Saxon. It has been asserted most of the Scyths were Israelites. Let's see. So what does this say? It has been asserted most of the Scyths were Israelites. This is a hard study. Most people doing this on the side of all Jews are black don't get into details like this. Who were these Scythians, or Scyths as they are often called, and how did the name Scythian originate? This was one of the names that the 10-tribed house of Israel bore in their captivity. The most likely derivation of this word is as follows. The word Scythian appears to be derived from the Hebrew word Sukkoth, and we shall later see that the language of the Scythians, Scythiac, was very similar to the Hebrew. Strong's exhaustive concordance defines this word as follows. And you have this explanation, which is Sukkoth, the name of a place in Egypt, and of these three in Palestine. The Hebrew language was written only in consonants. The vowels had to be supplied by the reader. If one takes out the vowels from the Hebrew word Sukkoth, the basic part of the word is Sith. In Strong's exhaustive concordance, it is spelled phonetically, both with a C and also with an S. Remember, the C and the S often have the same sound as in our English words, sell and sell. Both English words are pronounced exactly alike. Ye shall dwell in booths 7 days, and all that are Israelites born shall dwell in booths, that your generations may know that I made the children of Israel to dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. This was observed by Israel forever. The Hebrew word used in verses 42 and 43, translated as booths, is from the Hebrew word sith or skith. The Greek word for Scythian is skis, and is pronounced much like the Hebrew word for booth. Okay. The above is consistent with the generally accepted view that Scythians mean nomads, which is consistent with staying in temporary dwellings or booths. It has been also tents, maybe. It has also been claimed among all the peoples known under the general name Scythians, the Scythians were the descendants of the children of Israel. Not only is it possible for us to notice a parallel by comparing the traditions of the two peoples, but history even recognizes that the majority of the peoples of the British Isles, particularly the Scots and the Saxons, are indeed the descendants of the Scythians, thus of the Israelites, the French-speaking peoples in prophecy, translated from the French Carol Caleb. So this is good research. That being said, there is academic controversy associated with the migrations of the peoples. There are many unknowns about the Scythians and migrations of the tribes of Israel. Yet also consider, Central Asia enters history around the 7th century BC with the Scythians, a people described as having European morphological traits by being both ancient and Chinese in Herodotus. European morphological traits means that the Scythians look like Caucasian Europeans. In 2010, it was reported that when teams of geneticists led Professor Brian Sykes took DNA samples in the Celtic regions of Britain, they discovered ancestries in the Caucasus, which lay within ancient Scythia and Mediterranean Europe. There you go. As far as the physical appearance of Scythians go, according to the ancient information I've seen on them, they were basically white Caucasian. Here's a little picture here. Scythian archer. They apparently were, for a time, the bulk of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. There really are Jews in Israel. So the point he's making here, I'd like to underline it. Various peoples who